Hello lovely student, welcome to my lesson on user-defined methods, and today I'm going to be focusing specifically on functions. So what is a function? A function performs a specific task. A function returns a value, but also remember that a function returns a single value. They can be called from anywhere in your program. So whether you use a function or a procedure, remember you can call a function or a procedure from anywhere in your program. How do I declare a function? A function is declared with the keyword function, followed by the name of the function, a colon, and then a return data type. This is a function declared without any parameters. Note there are no parameters being brought into this function. All the function is doing, it's performing a specific task and it's returning a value. The value being returned must be of a specific data type. So this is a typical example of a segment where we would write a function, the name of the function, the keyword function, followed by the name of the function and a return data type. Your variable section and the statements inside your function. The function uses a reserved word result to return the value that's being sent out by this function. This value that's being returned must be the same data type as the return data type of the function in your method header. Alternatively, instead of using the keyword or the reserved word result, you can use the name of the function to return the value that the function is sending out. Remember that the function returns a single value. The function has a return data type. The function uses the reserved word result or the name of the function to return the value. Functions with parameters. The keyword function followed by the name of the function, and then in round brackets, your first parameter being brought in, colon, and the data type of this variable that's being brought in. You separate each variable that's been brought in as a parameter using a semicolon if they are of different data types. If it is of the same data type, for example, sname1, sname2, colon, string, then you can call both those parameters and then separate it with a semicolon and then the next data type. So here again is your first parameter, colon, data type, semicolon, second parameter, colon, data type. So these are the two parameters, the values that are brought into the function. And then the function returns a value. This data type is your return data type. And this data type is the very same data type of the value that's being returned by the function. Okay, so you can bring in any data types as parameters and send out a completely different data type. So your variable section of your function, the statements that are being executed in this function, and then the value that's being returned is returned by using the reserved word result, or you can return it by using the name of the function. Again, remember that a function returns a single value and a function always has a return data type. How do I call a function? So when I write a function, the function has no value. It's completely meaningless if that function is not invoked or called. So there's three ways that I could call a function. The first way of calling a function is in an assignment statement. So I'm calling a predefined function that we often use, length. And we know that length returns the number of characters in a string as a data type integer. So I'm calling this function and I'm sending an argument, a parameter to this function is name. So I'm calling the function and assigning the return value into a variable. And this return value is the number of characters. In the second way, I'm calling the function in a selection statement, in an if statement. So if length of sname equals 8, then display valid password. So I can call a function in a condition or expression. And the last way of calling a function is in an output statement, when you are displaying something. So onto a memo, I'm displaying the number of characters and I'm calling length. So it's going to display the number of characters and how many characters this is going to display. Length is going to display how many characters. I should have converted this from int to string because I'm displaying on a memo. So make sure that when you are doing your display to test it out, that you're converting this from integer to string because you're displaying on a memo. So again, three ways to call a function in an assignment statement. Call the function, assign it to a variable, in a selection statement, in an if condition or expression. And lastly, you can call a function in a display statement. Activity 3 on functions. Today we're going to be looking at some Delphi coding, and here's the question that I've got for you and I've prepared it for you. It is a question from a matric past year paper, so I'd like you to pay special attention to the question, brainstorm the question, and try it out on Delphi before you actually take a look at the solution. Only refer to a solution when you are having problems or you're experiencing any difficulty. Okay, so the problem entails: write code for a method called compile code that receives the full name of the owner, the name of the restaurant, and the year the restaurant was opened as parameters, and compiles and returns an identification code in the following format. The percentage sign represents the first letter of the name of the restaurant. The dollar sign represents the last two letters of the full name of the owner. And Y represents the year the restaurant was opened. So your code must take on this format. On the button caption BTN compile code, extract the name of the restaurant from the edit box EDT restaurant. Extract the year opened from the edit box EDT year. Extract the full name of the owner from the EDT owner edit box. Call the function compile code and display your data as it appears in the sample output. Remember that a function is returning a code that you are going to be generating and compiling in your function. And the function is going to return the code in a certain data type. The data type of your function's return value must match the data type in your method specification where you define your method. The return data type of that function must match the return value of this function that you are sending out. Also remember that the function uses the reserved word result, or it can use the name of the function compile code to send out the value. Let's look at the sample output. So this is a graphical user interface that I have 3 labels: the owner name, the name of the restaurant, and the year the restaurant was opened. 3 T edits to allow the user to input data, a button called compile code, and you could use either a rich edit or a memo to do your display. Your sample output must look identical to this, where you display the heading restaurant name and the name of the input restaurant, and the year it was opened, and the owner's full name, and then your identification code that you have compiled. Enjoy the exercise. Please press pause on your video and attempt to do the solution on Delphi before actually referring to the solution. Okay, so let's look at the Delphi program for the question that I have given you, where you had to write a function. So again, 3 labels, 3 T edits, a memo or a rich edit to display, and your button called compile code. So let's look at the coding. Okay, so you had to write a function. So there's your function. It was called compile code. Your keyword starting with function, the name of the function compile code, and then I brought in the name of the restaurant, the name of the owner. Both these variables are of data type string. So those are my 2 parameters that's being brought into the function, and then separated by a semicolon and the year, which is a data type integer. So I've got 3 parameters, 2 of data type string and 1 parameter of data type integer. This function has a return value and it's sending out a string value. The control keys, the shift key and the letter C all simultaneously control shift and C will then take you to the framework of your function. So all this function is doing is it's bringing in 2 parameters, which is the name of the owner and the name of the restaurant and the year that it was opened. I now need to compile a code. So let's see, I created a variable called scode. It is the first character of the name of the restaurant. I want to get the last 2 characters of the owner's name. So I'm using copy from sOwner, start at length of the owner -1. The last character is at the end of the string, and then -1 will give you the starting position of the last 2 characters. And all I want to do is copy 2 characters. And then I'm just joining the year that the restaurant was opened, and because it's an integer, I'm converting int to string. I'm using compile code, which is the name of the function, to send out the value. Alternatively, you can use result. Let's just put that as a comment. You can say result, which I prefer and I use it all the time. I actually use result assigned S code all the time. But in today's exercise, I wanted to show you that it does work if you use the name of the function to send out the value that's being returned. Remember again, S code is of data type string. So I'm sending out the code. The function sends out a value. The function returns a value, either using the reserved word result or the name of the function. And S code, the return data type, must be of data type string. So I'm bringing in different data types. I'm bringing in two values which are of data type string, and I'm also bringing in a value which is of data type integer, but the function is returning a string value. So the function, the value that's being returned must be the same value that is being sent out as a data type on your method definition. Right, so let's look at how we call this function. Remember that the function has no value if it is not called. A function can be called anywhere in a program. I can call a function within a function. I can call a function on a button. I can call a function on an event handler. So you can call a function anywhere in your program. So I created two variables, one for the name of the restaurant, one for the name of the owner, and one for the year that the restaurant was opened. And I'm extracting values from t-edits. I'm getting a value from a t-edit for the name of the restaurant. I'm getting a value from a t-edit for the name of the owner. And I'm also getting a value from a t-edit for the year the restaurant was opened. And I'm converting the year from string to int because I'm storing it into an integer variable. I am then displaying the name of the restaurant with a heading, the year it was opened with a heading, the name of the owner with a heading, and I'm calling my function. This is where I'm calling my function. I'm calling compile code. I'm calling compile code with the name of the restaurant, the name of the owner, and the year it was opened. So I'm sending in srestaurant. I'm getting a value from the user and I'm sending it when I'm calling the function. I'm sending it as an argument. When compile code is called, it's called with 3 parameters as an argument. And the first parameter is the name of the restaurant. And I'm getting it from the user input from the keyboard onto an edit box. The next parameter I'm bringing in is the name of the owner. I'm also getting that value from an edit box. I'm storing it into a variable and I'm passing this variable as a parameter when compile code is called. And the last parameter is the year of the restaurant. Again, I'm getting that a user input from the keyboard, and the user is going to enter that value onto a t-edit. And our year is now being passed as a parameter when compile code is called. Note again, in this particular example, I called this function in a display statement. I could have called this function and assigned it to a variable and then displayed the variable. So all I could have done here, I could have called it, for instance, I could have said scode here and call the function. So let's just do it and I'll show it to you. I could have said scode, and scode again is of data type string. And instead of calling the function in a display statement, I could have said scode assignment statement and now call the function. Okay, I want to put that into a comment because that's something that you can do as an alternative solution. And then I could call, I just want to copy this quickly. Okay, so I could call a function. I'm calling the function and assigning the value to a variable. And then all I need to do at the end is just display S code. Okay, so let me just write that alternative display for you. All I could have done is just said, copy that, and I can put it as a comment for you. And the identification code will then be S code. So remember 3 ways of calling a function. The one way that I used today was in a display statement where I called my function with my 3 parameters being sent. I'm sending this as an argument. So when the function is being called here, it then goes to the function compile code. There's your compile code. sRestaurant is then mapped. The value is mapped onto this parameter that's being brought into the function. And this value is then used here. Whatever you bring in is what you're going to use in your function. sOwner, when this function is called, this value is mapped onto sOwner. And then I use sOwner inside my function. And the last parameter, year, is being mapped onto the year. And I'm using the year to formulate the code. Also remember that the number of actual parameters where the function is being called is my actual parameter. The number of actual parameters must equal to the number of formal parameters. So I'm calling it with 3 formal, I'm declaring it with 3 formal parameters in my method definition. When I call it, I must call it with 3 parameters. The data type must also be the same. So sRestaurant is of data type string. This must also be of data type string. Year is of data type integer. Year must also be of data type integer. And lastly, the rule is the order must be the same. So I'm calling it with sRestaurant first because when I defined it in my method definition, I defined it with sRestaurant first, then sOwner, then year. If your order is incorrect, then your mapping of the values will be incorrect. Right, so let's take a look at how this program works. Let's run it. Okay, so let's enter the name of the owner, and I'm going to enter Christian Lucas. The name of the restaurant is Petisco's. And the year it was opened, let's put 2016. Right, so if I want to compile the code, remember the code is the first character of the name of the restaurant, the last 2 characters of the owner's name, and the year. So it should give you PAS 2016. Let's have a look. Okay, so it displayed the name, the restaurant name, the year it was opened, the owner's full name, and the identification code. So that brings me to the end of today's lesson. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Keep on persevering, stay inspired, stay motivated, and follow me on my next video.